We're usually taught that Africans first came to the Americas as enslaved people during the transatlantic slave trade, but that's only part of the story. More and more research shows that people of African origin may have arrived in the Americas thousands of years before Columbus ever landed. This challenges long-held beliefs about how early American civilizations formed. There's growing evidence that African explorers, traders, and travelers reached the Americas well before European explorers. These early interactions may have played a bigger role in shaping ancient cultures than we've been told. This idea isn't just a theory. It's supported by findings in history, archaeology, language studies, and even genetics. Ancient African sailors are believed to have crossed the Atlantic and made contact with Native American communities. These weren't one-time trips, but part of a larger pattern of African exploration and trade. In this video, we'll explore the strong evidence that points to Africans reaching the Americas early on. We'll look at how their culture and skills may have influenced local societies, and how colonial powers later worked to erase this part of history. By looking at these connections, we gain a better understanding of how people moved, met, and shared knowledge long before European colonization. One of the most important pieces of evidence is the advanced shipbuilding and navigation skills of ancient African civilizations. Long before European explorers set sail, African cultures were already building large ships and traveling far across oceans. Civilizations like the Egyptians, Carthaginians, and Malians had the knowledge and tools to make long sea journeys. The ancient Egyptians, for example, left behind carvings and paintings that show large ships built for ocean travel. Writings from around 600 BCE talk about African sailors traveling around the continent, showing they were already exploring faraway places. Some historians believe these sailors may have even reached the Americas, bringing their ideas and traditions with them. The Carthaginians, descendants of the Phoenicians, were also known for their skills at sea. They built a vast trade network across the Mediterranean and beyond. Some artifacts, like coins and items believed to be Carthaginian, have been found in parts of South America, suggesting they might have crossed the Atlantic. But perhaps the most detailed story of African exploration comes from the Mali Empire. In the 1300s, Mali's ruler Abubakari II is said to lead a major expedition across the Atlantic with a fleet of 2,000 ships. Although many mainstream historians call this a myth, Arab writers like Al-Amari documented his journey and his decision to give up the throne to explore new lands. Some cultural similarities between West Africa and ancient Mesoamerican societies suggest that his voyage might have succeeded and influenced local people. There's also physical evidence. In different parts of the Americas, researchers have found signs of early African presence. One of the most striking discoveries is the massive stone heads made by the Olmec civilization in Mesoamerica. The Olmec civilization, which thrived in what's now Mexico around 1200 BCE, left behind giant stone heads that many believe show African features: broad noses, full lips, and tightly curled hair. These statues have led some researchers to think there may have been contact between the Olmecs and African visitors or settlers. But it's not just the statues. Other clues suggest African influence in early American cultures. Items like African-style cotton gourds and similarities between some African and Native American languages add to the case. Even some genetic studies have found African DNA markers in indigenous populations, hinting at early mixing between Africans and native groups, long before Europeans arrived. There are also signs in farming and architecture. Both West African and ancient American societies built large earthen mounds for ceremonies and community events. The fact that such a specific practice exists on both sides of the Atlantic suggests that people and ideas may have crossed the ocean. All of this questions the old idea that ancient civilizations developed totally separate from each other. But despite this strong evidence, the history of African presence in the Americas before Columbus has been mostly left out of mainstream education. During colonization, European powers shaped historical stories to support their own goals, like justifying conquest and creating racial hierarchies that pushed Africans and indigenous people to the bottom. Accepting that Africans were global travelers, skilled sailors, and cultural contributors would have gone against that narrative. European historians at the time often ignored or downplayed stories of African exploration. Even Columbus and other early explorers wrote about meeting dark-skinned people in the Caribbean and South America. Spanish writers like Bartolomé de las Casas even recorded native stories of encounters with African traders. But these reports were usually brushed aside or rewritten to fit colonial ideas. The transatlantic slave trade also played a major role in shaping how African history in the Americas was remembered. The forced movement of millions of Africans created a lasting impression that African people were only ever brought here as enslaved workers, not as explorers, builders, or traders. That view still influences much of what's taught today. But the real story is much deeper. Long before Columbus, Black people were part of the story of the Americas. From their advanced sailing skills to the cultural and language connections found in archaeology and history, the evidence of early African contact is strong. Still, much of this has been left out or ignored. By bringing it back into conversation, we get a more honest picture of how humans move, connected, and built together. This isn't just another version of history. It's a key part of our shared human past, and it deserves to be known, studied, and respected. The story of early African presence in the Americas is more than just a historical possibility. It's a powerful reminder that the past is often more connected and complex than we've been taught. For generations, mainstream history has repeated a narrow version of events, leaving out the rich and diverse experiences of people who shaped the world in ways that still matter today. Reconsidering the role of ancient African explorers, builders, and cultural contributors invites us to see history from a wider lens, one that includes the voices and journeys of people too often overlooked. It challenges outdated narratives and brings new life to stories that were silenced, not because they lacked truth, but because they didn't fit the dominant version of history. By recognizing evidence of African contact with the Americas long before Columbus, we open the door to a more honest and complete understanding of global civilization. These early explorers weren't just visitors. They were participants in a larger human story of movement, trade, exchange, and innovation. Their legacies may live on in the cultures, traditions, and communities they touched. This isn't about rewriting history. It's about recovering it. It's about giving credit where it's due and asking better questions about how ancient peoples interacted and learned from one another across oceans and continents. The more we explore these untold chapters, the more we understand that human history is not a straight line shaped by a few well-known names, but a web of journeys, relationships, and shared knowledge. Africans were part of that web, not just as victims of slavery, but as explorers, innovators, and contributors to ancient civilizations in the Americas. As we continue to learn, question, and uncover, we invite you to think differently about the past. Stay curious. Stay open-minded. Because when we shine a light on hidden history, we don't just honor those who came before, we also empower future generations to see themselves as part of something bigger. Thank you for being part of this journey to explore the truth, celebrate cultural connections, and bring lost histories back into the light.